Okay, gang, so here it is. The saucer is sealed together, and what a jump. Once had the glue in my hands, all the work that went inside this, that's a huge leap to lay that glue down and stick it together, because there's no looking back. One thing, right off the bat, the decals. I should not have put these decals on. Since doing the interior and holding it together and testing it and taking it apart, putting it back, I've handled this like 1,000 times. So you definitely should wait until at least this thing is sealed together to put the decals on. Because now I have around the edges, there's some painting to be done. Inside, some missed spots, some light leaks. And with the decals there, I'm going to have to be very careful. I guess for some repair, if the decals weren't there, I could spray paint along the edges to get it back with a little bit of taping. But now I think it would be a nightmare with taping and worrying about the decals. So the edges will be hand painted. Just some lights. We'll see what the lighting looks like. There we go. So with all these windows, the lighting looks great. I do have some the nav lights on here. You can see there's the red light there. These are going to blink separately from the rest of the lights. There's still a little light leak along the edge. I'll take care of that. But as far as the windows surrounding the nav light, once I put the LED along the edge, and the LED I had to grind down. It's very thin there where the saucer goes together. So yep, I ground it down to almost nothing to fit it in there. And then we used some, get it on camera here. It's too dark. Get some light. Some tulip fabric paint. It's very thick. However, you put a big glob of it. I put a big glob on either side of the nav light. And if you put too much, it starts to settle down and spread out. So you just have to be careful with that. Put a little bit, let it dry a little, put another drop on it. But it's good to build up a wall around this light so none of the red lighting gets in the windows. Then the shuttle bay. The shuttle bay comes with a cover. I can just cover it up like that. Done. But it also comes with a clear part for the shuttle bay. And what I did was I taped up the clear part, sprayed it with the Krylon metallic spray paint, and then took the tape off. And what you see there, I got the lights turned all the way up. It in person is not as overwashed as that with light. I'll turn the lighting down and maybe you'll be able to see that. This is kind of what it looks like in person with the lights where they're turned up to where they should be. I'm not sure what the shuttle bay is supposed to look like on the Enterprise, but I just decided to appoint myself Admiral of the Fleet, and I have decided that this is what all shuttle bays will look like. I taped 3 strips, kind of like a little landing runway inside there, and along the back wall had a couple of little pieces of tape to represent windows along the back wall. So I'll probably leave that open, leave the shuttle bay doors off, because it looks cool even if it's wrong. There it is. had a little trouble with lighting on the back of the saucer, right about here. These windows are supposed to be blue, so I painted underneath the top saucer, behind those windows, I painted that clear blue. However, none of the light gets back there. Turn these up. You can see there's nothing happening here. And I put a row of lights about here, facing backwards. None of that light gets back there. So let's flip it over. It's the bottom of the saucer. What I did was I cut away the bottom of the saucer along here. I just cut a big chunk out of it. It's very difficult. This model, this plastic, tends to snap and crack and split when you're trying to cut it. So I had to be very careful. So now the blue windows, which are right here, will get light from the neck of the ship that attaches on the bottom. I'll put lighting in there, which will shine up through there. You can see that there's light leaking through here, but it's not enough to light up those windows. What I realized after I cut this away, I was kind of mad. This is a clear model, which I forgot because it's covered with paint. All I had to do is take paint thinner and rub the paint off this section, and then the light would have come up from below and I wouldn't have to cut the whole thing away. So, but it was like right after I cut it away that dawned on me. So I kind of did a Chris Farley, smacking myself in the head. So stupid. So it's a good thing it didn't get cracked. So let's take a flashlight. Look at those lights. So now you can see. Now you can see the lighting coming through and getting to the blue windows. That's what will happen once the lighting's in the neck. Big bright white light from the middle because the bridge fell off. That's not glued in yet. I still haven't put the decals on the bridge. There should be some strobes. I think a strobe light on the top somewhere. I haven't wired it, so that's done. That can't be fixed. 2 strobes on the back of the engines will be flashing. And I'll try and put another strobe somewhere on the ship along the neck somewhere. But as far as a strobe being on the top of the saucer or bottom, it's a little late for that. So that really won't matter till that one super next generation nerd comes to my house and sees the model, and of course will point out that I'm missing some strobe lights on it, but that's okay. I'll have to show him that maybe I'll have to make up some credentials showing that I am Admiral of the Fleet now, and I've decided that there's no strobes on the saucer. Okay, here's one of the nacelles. Talk about the individual parts, and then I'll put it together and we can see it lit up. So here's the main guts. We have 3 front-facing red LEDs. And then a blue LED strip. However, this is a little different than a normal LED strip. Now you see each white point there, which normally would be an LED light, and those white rectangles would turn blue. However, on this one, this is a ultra smooth LED tape, and it's from, the website is Modeler's Brand. The light doesn't come directly up. Those rectangles, that's material, and that will stay white. The blue light is shot out the sides of those, kind of like ambient lighting. So instead of an in-your-face individual blue light, it's a little more subdued. and we'll take a look at that. It has the achieved effect, but not quite enough, so I may have to do some more shading on the painting. What happens is, normally with the regular LED tape, when you look through the side panels, you see each individual blue LED light. And the effect that that I'm looking for is a solid blue coloring along the entire side of the nacelle. So they do a better job at that, but not quite there yet. I had a little trouble lighting the back end of the panels, these blue panels. So one problem is the LEDs, that they're shooting sideways but facing forward, and I need more light in the back. But I had already taped this down. So I painted the inside of the bottom of the nacelle white to help reflect more light. I'm probably going to paint this white instead of going all through the hassle of taping. I may hand paint the inside of this white. The side grills are painted on the inside, they're clear blue paint. On the outside, it's painted copper. And that allows it, when the lights are off, it looks copper. And when the lights are turned on, it will change to blue on the outside. The end of the nacelle is painted on the inside with clear red, and the outside of it I sanded several times to get a rough exterior. Also sprayed the outside exterior of this with clear flat spray, several coats. So let's we'll put it together temporarily and then hook it up and see how the lights look. Okay, there it is. Now let's see if you can see this. So the grills on the nacelles are copper, and a huge blemish here that I'll have to fix. Get some subdued lighting. See what they look like. There you can see it goes from the copper. Once the lights come on, it's blue. Unfortunately, on camera, the red looks kind of white and washed out, but it's a solid red here in person. The blue, you can kind of see the individual lights at certain angles. However, as opposed to the regular LED, they are in your face as far as being individual blue lights. And it's even a little better in person here as far as being a solid blue color down the nacelles. There, you got some red there. So that's kind of what the front looks like with the lights fully on in person. But that's the nacelles. So this is kind of on hold now. I've got to order the circuit board that will allow me to blink the strobe lights and the nav lights at different rates. And also there are strobe lights that go on right on this nacelle on the top and the bottom. And I think those lights are included with the kit. I'm going to order that from Tenna Controls. So I cannot glue this till I get those lights, fit them in. So it's kind of on hold till that whole process happens. Alright, let's take a look at the biggest flaw in the kit as far as lighting goes. You just saw the engines lit up. We have to get power to the engine, which will come up in the bottom of the hull. The wiring from the power will be inside the hull, but it has to get from the hull, as you can see this wire here, through the wings or the pylons, up to the engines. So right now I've already got the wiring in there, but the problem is that this piece here, the pylons, are solid plastic. There's nowhere to hide the wiring. So right now I've got the wiring going from inside the hull. It's buried in the plastic, and then it comes out the top of the pylon, which will attach to the engine. So let's look at a few pictures that show how we got from the solid plastic to having the wiring buried inside. So the first step is to dig the trenches. I used a Dremel tool, and if you notice that, I guess, cutting wheel that's on the end, that's the bit they used in the original Dremel commercial where they were showing all the amazing things it could do, and they used that to cut a nail in half. Well, I use it to cut the trenches. You have to be careful. You have to keep eyeballing it, making sure you don't come out the other end. Dig it deep enough to get 4 wires into it. And when you cut with it into the plastic, it cuts the trench and many times pushes the plastic to the end of the bit, so you have a blob of stuck plastic. But if you just give it a second to dry and touch it with the wheel spinning, it flicks it off. So just make sure you wear eye protection. So that took quite a while to get that trench just right. Once the trench was done, I laid in 4 wires, 2 sets, one set to light the blue and red LEDs, and 1 set that will light the strobe lights that I don't have in the engines quite yet. Then I laid a little layer of CA glue in the trench to hold everything in place before I started puttying the trench. And then I let that dry and then moved on to the next step. So this brings me to my favorite product, Mr. Dissolved Putty. And this is from Mr. Hobby. And all their products start with the word Mr. And it's so goofy you gotta love it. So I take Mr. Dissolved Putty, which is regular putty dissolved in some acetone, I'm sure, and they say you can make your own, but that's way more than I care to get involved with. So I use this. You put on 1 coat. I use a toothpick to dab it in the trenches. Wait at least overnight for this to dry. That's very important. Then put on the 2nd coat. And like I said, I went to like 4 coats. It's possible 1 or 2 coats. I use a hair dryer. When you use a hair dryer on it to dry it out, you can do that, but just make sure it's dry until you see all imperfections and divots and holes gone. And then you can move on to sanding. When I started sanding, I noticed the wiring and I thought I had hit the wires with the sander. But it turns out that the CA glue dries clear. It's like glass. So that was actually the wiring embedded underneath the CA glue. So no harm was done. And painting right on top of the CA glue worked out just fine. So it was alright. So when I started sanding, I had to be careful. Some people will sand all the raised relief off of the pylons, so the entire thing is just flat and smooth. But I wanted all the detail and the raised relief on there, so I had to be very careful sanding the trenches. Use some skinny sanding sticks and small pieces of sandpaper, and made sure I was sanding as close to the trench as possible. Once it was sanded to where I liked it to be, quick shot of Tamiya primer, which exposes all the areas that weren't quite right. Sand again, maybe a little Mr. Dissolve putty here and there to touch up, quick shot of primer, sand it again, and just keep back and forth with that process till it's the way I wanted it. And then I went to spraying the pylons, the body color. One of the reasons I put the trench exactly where I put it, if you notice on the forward area of the pylon, a section of a whole bunch of straight panels in line, there are no decals that cover that section. So I put the trench a little bit behind that because that area does get covered by some decals. So if I have little imperfections in there, the decals are going to hide that and it won't be noticed. Well, thanks for watching. I hope this helped you out, and we'll see you next time.